Okay. So let me just share the screen. Okay. So Professor Shural, I'm audible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let me start with a new topic on this blockchain. So by this time, you got a kind of broad overview about what blockchain is, how broadly it works, how the different components of blockchain have developed over time. And today we are going to start with one of the most important aspect of blockchain design, that is the consensus algorithm which is running on behind of it. So we have two different setup of blockchain. One is the permission model of blockchain, and the second one is the classical permissionless blockchain setting. So in case of permissionless blockchain setting, that is widely used by cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or other blockchain platforms like Ethereum. So we are first going to look into those kind of consensus algorithms in the permissionless setting. Then gradually we will move to the consensus algorithms in permission blockchain network, and finally touch upon different kind of interesting consensus algorithms that have been developed in the literature over the past 10 years. So let us start with the consensus in permissionless blockchain networks. So basically this permissionless model of blockchain that we have already discussed earlier, that it is basically a kind of open network. That means anyone can join in the network to initiate the transaction, or anyone in the network can initiate the transaction. And at the same time, participants are free to leave the network, and at the same time, they can join again, or new participants can join dynamically, or participants can just join without sending any transaction. They can observe what is going on in the network. So it is just like a kind of complete open network, but still I want to maintain the transparency of information, and at the same time, I want to make it secure, and want to make it tamper-proof. So that is the kind of broad idea behind the permissionless model of the permissionless setting. And this kind of permissionless setting, as we had discussed earlier, that this is very much suitable for the applications like cryptocurrency, where you want to do some kind of cross-border trading, and you do not want your currency under the control of any government or any bank. So it is a kind of complete open environment, but at the same time, we should be able to do the financial transactions with the help of the corresponding cryptocurrency. Now with that, the basic assumption behind the design of the permissionless model is that that more than 50% of the participants in the network are honest. Well, and that particular assumption comes from a general idea of a society that if a society has a majority of its participants as dishonest, then the society cannot run, right? So we need to make a society to work perfectly. We need to ensure that, well, the majority of the participants and the majority of the members of that society are honest. And blockchain actually works on that principle. And we'll see later on that the moment you are violating from this principle, blockchain doesn't hold any kind of security after that. Well, so this is actually one of the major limitations of open blockchain network, or rather any kind of blockchain network. Even for the closed or the permission model of blockchain network, we'll see that such kind of restrictions are there. So you will always have a kind of upper bound on the number of malicious nodes or the number of dishonest participants that can participate in the consensus procedure. If there are more number of participants there in the consensus procedure, then the system doesn't sustain anymore. So this is one of the major kind of assumption behind the design of this architecture. And in general, people assume that if you can build up a kind of sufficiently large network by including sufficient amount of diversity from the society or from the environment, then you will be able to ensure this. Well, because with a large network or with a kind of large number of participants, it is difficult to have more than 50% of the control over the environment by any kind of dishonest participants. So the entire premise is based on this particular assumption. So while we are going through with our further discussion on the consensus protocol or the security of a blockchain network, always keep in mind that whatever we are going to claim, those kind of claims hold only when you are assuming that more than 50% of the participants are honest. Now with this, we have different kind of permissionless model, and two of the most popular permissionless models are the Bitcoin and the Ethereum. The kind of the classical blockchain environments which actually made blockchain popular among its users. So particularly the consensus protocol that we are going to look today works on behind of the design of the Bitcoin or the Ethereum network. So the main challenges that we have while we are going to design the consensus algorithm or the consensus protocol for a permissionless model is first of all that the participants do not know each other. Well, and the moment you are making this kind of setting or this kind of assumption that the participants do not know each other, anyone can join, anyone can leave, anyone can initiate a transaction without doing any kind of pre-authentication or registering in the system, then you cannot use a protocol based on message passing, right? That we discussed earlier, which was the kind of basic roadblock behind the design of such kind of completely decentralized architecture. Because the classical distributed consensus algorithms like Graph, Paxos, all these algorithms we are going to discuss in details now. Now, those kind of algorithms has one fundamental assumption that you know that who are the participants in the network, and you can use their IP address to send message to them, right? But by the moment you are assumed that you are having an open network and you do not have any kind of central registry or any kind of centralization which is going to give you the information about the participants that who has joined, what is their IP address, then you cannot use the message passing network anymore. And remember that broadcast doesn't work here because we are considering a kind of peer-to-peer network over the internet. So you cannot do broadcast over the entire internet. Well, then the participants who are not a part of the network, they will also get the message, and the entire internet will get clogged with those kind of broadcast messages. Well, we are just considering a kind of overlay peer-to-peer network on our internet. And on that overlay peer-to-peer network, I need to reach to every participant. Well, so the type of protocol that or the kind of network protocol that we typically use in such kind of architecture, we call it as the gossiping. So the idea of the gossiping is that you send a message to your neighbors, the neighbors whom you know, and those neighbors will further gossip your message to its neighbor, and that way the information will propagate across the network. So it is only like that You do not know all the participants of your network, but if you do not know anyone, then obviously you will not be able to join the system. You need to know someone. Well, so in this case, you only know your peers. You do not know the information beyond your peers. Well, and that kind of peer information are typically provided by the client application or applet that you are going to use. So for example, whenever you are using the Bitcoin applet or Ethereum client to connect to the Ethereum network or the Bitcoin network, those applet or the client, they are actually providing you some certain peer information, and you are going to choose those peer as your next hub. Well, so that way you just have the kind of one hop information. You do not have information beyond that. Now, the second challenge that we have that in such kind of open network, we do not have any kind of central leader. Well, so again, in the distributed consensus algorithm that we are going to discuss in details, you will see that this kind of distributed consensus algorithms, it uses a kind of leader-based approach. That means you elect someone as the leader will collect all the votes, and then the leader will confirm that, well, this is the kind of majority that have been achieved from the votes. Well, now we maintain the security by changing the leader. So it is not like that one participant is going to be the leader all the time, but rather we do a kind of leader election algorithm to select someone from the leader at every round. And in that round, the leader proposes a new block. But here in an open network, we do not have a concept of leader again, because we do not want any kind of centralization in the architecture. Because we do not want any kind of centralization in the architecture, we cannot say that, well, this is going to be the leader who is going to propose the next block. That kind of architecture is not suitable or not expected for an open network. So that's why we really do not know that how many participants are going to propose a new block, and how I'm going to maintain a kind of global chain in such kind of open network, right? So this remains a kind of open question, that who is going to add the next block in the blockchain. The third challenge that I have is the network is asynchronous, right? So the network is asynchronous basically means, I mentioned that earlier, that we do not have any kind of global clock. So in a perfect distributed system, you will never be able to ensure the existence of a global clock. You can do a kind of rough synchronization of the clock among the participants, or kind of use time protocol, network time protocol, or NTP kind of things to synchronize your clock with a global clock. But that synchronization is again not perfect. You will always have some kind of latency or some kind of delay of receiving the information, which you cannot count directly, and as a consequence, your clock will always be lagging or will be ahead of the global clock. Well, even with a kind of very small fraction, and as a result, you will never be able to ensure that all the participants are maintaining the same clock. Well, so there will be some plus minus drift, which you cannot avoid. And theoretically, this is the kind of interesting property of an asynchronous network, or a kind of, rather, I would say this is something that asynchronous network doesn't guarantee, that you may see different blocks or different messages in different orders. Well, so for example, you have a blockchain like this. Say, for example, after block B1, block B2 has been mined, and block B2 is pointing to B1, and then block B3 is mined, and block B3 is pointing to B2. Now, what will happen, as you have seen from the last couple of discussions from Professor Shural, that every miner or every node who is going to propose a new block and going to find out the proof for that block, they are going to broadcast that block in the network, right? And that way you are going to receive the blocks from your peer. So once your peer is going to relay the block that they have listened to you, then only you are going to receive that new block. Now, it might always possible in an asynchronous network that you first receive the block B3, and after you have received block B3, then you have received block B2. Well, so such kind of concern are always there, such kind of problems are always there. And when such kind of problems are there, your consensus protocol should also guarantee this, that you are going to maintain the ordering of the blocks. Well, so the question comes that in an asynchronous network, if you are going to receive the messages out of order, then how you are going to ensure a correct operation of the protocol? Well, that is the kind of one of the interesting open challenges that we have. whenever we are going to design the consensus architecture in a permissionless model. And the final challenge, final interesting challenge that we have, that we need to prevent any kind of monopoly in the network. Well, so it should not happen. So if you remember that the earlier 50% rule that I have mentioned, that the entire premise of the blockchain operation is the assumption that more than 50% of the participants are honest. Well, so to ensure that more than 50% of the participants are honest, I need to have a kind of pure decentralization of the algorithm. I cannot hold any kind of monopoly here. So if it happens that a single user or a group of users get the control of the network, and if those group of users are kind of dishonest people, then they might get the control of the entire network, and they might deviate the protocol from its correct operation. Well, so that way we do not want any kind of monopoly or any kind of centralizations in the entire architecture. So you will never be able to assume that, well, I have a trusted authority or I have a kind of trusted centralized partner who is going to provide me this set of information. That kind of assumption, if you are making while designing a blockchain protocol, then you are actually violating the basic principle behind decentralization, that you are finally moving towards a centralized architecture from a decentralized architecture. And the basic idea here is that we do not trust anyone in the network. Well, so even the so-called trusted party like the certification authority, we even do not trust them. Well, so for example, in our current operation of the internet, internet is based on any different kind of centralized control over the architecture. So, for example, you have the certification authority who are going to provide the digital certificate for our website. Well, so whenever you are opening a website through the HTTPS protocol, you are actually validating the certificate from that certification authority, and your idea is that you are trusting that certification authority. You are saying that, well, that certification authority who is going to provide you the digital certificate or have been provided the digital certificate for a particular website, that certification authority is the correct one. Well, so that kind of trust you are maintaining while doing the operations over the internet. But here, in case of the blockchain design, we do not trust anyone. We even do not trust the certification authorities. Well, so always remember this point. So because of that reason, designing a kind of algorithm or designing a kind of consensus protocol or any kind of protocol on top of a blockchain network is challenging whenever you want to make it completely decentralized. Well, so these are the challenges that we have for developing a consensus protocol or for developing a consensus architecture for the blockchain. And with these challenges, we need to see that how we can develop an efficient protocol that can provide me the support that we are wanting. Well, any doubt or any query up to this point?
Sir, yes. If we don't have a certification authority, then how will we prevent Sybil attacks?
I'll be coming to those points, that how we are going to prevent different kind of attacks, or how the blockchain is going to maintain that. Well, so again, as I was mentioning, that you need a kind of complete decentralization to make the operation possible. Well, and at the end of the day, we'll see that we will put certain kind of restrictions on such kind of architecture or such kind of platform. So I'll be coming to those attacks, the different kind of attacks which are there, and how we can typically prevent such kind of attacks. Any other point? Well, okay, I'm just taking a note of that. I'll come to that point about Sybil attacks.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Now, let us come to the design of this protocol. Well, so to design this protocol, the first thing you need to keep in mind is that FLP impossibility theorem that I mentioned earlier. Well, now to go to that FLP impossibility theorem, or to reiterate that FLP impossibility theorem, first of all, let us see that in what kind of architecture we are finally going to put our blockchain. Well, so the first consideration is the synchronous versus asynchronous network, that I have mentioned multiple times. That in case of synchronous network, I am sure that that I will get the message within a predefined time threshold. But in case of asynchronous network, I am not sure when the message will arrive or whether the message will arrive at all. Well, there can be message loss, there can be out of order message, there can be scenarios when you are receiving different type of messages, you are receiving the malicious messages from the attacker. So that kind of things can always happen in case of an asynchronous network. And our real network is actually behaving like an asynchronous model. Well, so it may not be completely asynchronous or a perfect asynchronous, but for the time being, let us assume that we are going to design the protocol or going to design my consensus algorithm on top of an asynchronous network. Well, then the second consideration that comes is the kind of different type of failures which can happen in a network. Well, so the first type of failure that can happen in the network is the kind of crash fault. So crash fault basically means that a node stops responding. Well, so that basically means that whenever you are sending certain kind of message to those nodes, you are not going to get any kind of reply from those nodes. Well, and this is a kind of crash fault because none of the other participants in the network will be able to communicate to that node. Well, so this is the kind of fault which is being considered by the majority of the distributed system and majority of the distributed consensus algorithms. So in the context of the classical distributed consensus algorithms, like the Raft, Paxos, that kind of algorithms, they actually considered a crash fault, well, in the network. Then comes the fault which we call as the link fault or a network fault. That basically means a network link fails to deliver the message. Well, so it is something like that a node has sent the message to say that 3 of its neighbor, and one of its neighbor fails to receive the message, and that particularly can come from your underlying network protocol. That if there can be packet drop from the network, and because of such kind of reasons, the message may not get delivered. Well, so that kind of failures we consider it as a link failure or a network failure. And a third type of failures, which is actually kind of most important for our context and kind of most challenging to handle, that kind of failure we call it as a Byzantine fault. Well, so why do we call it as a Byzantine, or from where this name Byzantine came from? We'll discuss that later on, but for the time being, you consider that Byzantine fault means that is a kind of malicious node. Malicious node in the sense that a node is sending two different information to two of its peers. Well, so for example, in this example, the node says to one of its peer that B2 is the next block after B1, and in another of its peer, it says that B4 is the next block after B1. Well, so that means whenever you are relaying the message or whenever you are propagating the message, you are sending different information to different of your peers to create a partitioning in the network. Well, and that kind of partitioning are kind of dishonest partitioning. That means you are trying to deceive the network from coming to a common goal or coming to a common consensus. Well, because you see that in the consensus algorithm, ultimately that will be going to be some kind of voting based mechanism where everyone agree to a common principle or a common premise. But in that case, if I am sending different information to different parties, they are going to get confused. So for example, while giving the vote, if I say to half of the participants in the network that I am giving a vote to node X, and to half of the other participants saying that I am going to give the vote to person Y, then obviously there would be a kind of conflict. And that kind of conflict or that kind of failures, we call it as a kind of Byzantine fault. And this Byzantine fault are kind of most challenging fault in a distributed system. And there are plethora of research that have actually tried to design a fault tolerant system which can tolerate such kind of Byzantine fault. Well, and later on we'll see that to tolerate a Byzantine fault, you need to put a lot of restrictions on the operation of your network. Well, now the impossibility theorem that we discussed earlier as well, let me just reiterate it. The impossibility theorem says that consensus is not possible in a perfect asynchronous network, even with a single crash failure. Well, so that means if you are assuming that you are working on a asynchronous environment, you are working on an environment where you do not have any kind of fixed deadline of receiving the messages, or your message can be received out of order, or there can be possibility of message loss, then even with a single crash fault or any kind of failure, you will never be able to reach to a consensus. and we are not being able to reach to a consensus. What does it mean? That basically means we will not be able to simultaneously ensure the safety and liveness properties of the consensus protocol. Well, and if you remember that we discussed earlier what is meant by safety and what is meant by liveness. Safety basically means that all correct participants in the algorithm will eventually reach to the correct decision, and that correct decision will be unique across the network. Well, so the safety has two different requirements. So the first requirement is that all correct participants will reach to the correct decision, and the second requirement is that that correct decision would be unique across the network. Well, so the second requirement actually help us to reach to ensure something called consensus finality. That basically means that whenever you have completed the execution of the protocol, you are guaranteed that the consensus has been reached and everyone has been agreed to a kind of common premise or a kind of common argument. Well, so that basically said by the safety protocol, and the liveness protocol basically says that the protocol will be able to progress, that it will not happen that they are just keeping on sending the message and they are going to reach to a kind of consensus within a kind of predefined time or within a bounded time, or with a kind of bounded round of bounded number of rounds of message passing. Well, so that is basically ensured by the liveness property, that the protocol should progress, that you periodically you should be able to complete the current round and you would be able to move to the next round of the protocol. Now, in case of existing distributed consensus protocol, the major challenge is that what we have understood from the FLP impossibility theorem, that you cannot ensure safety and liveness together. That means you need to compromise one. Well, so what Lamport and other pioneers in the classical distributed system they have done, they have tried to compromise with the liveness. So what they have said that, well, let the protocol be run for infinite number of rounds, but eventually when it will terminate, at its termination, it will be able to uniquely determine the consensus state of the system. Well, so that means they are giving more priority to the safety rather than liveness. So they are saying that, well, liveness can be compromised. I do not want to give a kind of hard bound that, well, I will be able to reach to consensus within this time frame, but that protocol might execute for infinitely many rounds theoretically. Or it might, in practice, it might take a long duration to reach to a consensus. But the moment it will reach consensus, the correct participants will be able to uniquely determine the correct state of the system. Well, so that is basically ensured by the existing consensus protocols like Paxos, Raft, and the other protocols that we are going to discuss later. Well, so what we have observed that this kind of protocol for ensuring safety and liveness together, while compromising over liveness over safety, that means if you want to give priority to the safety, you cannot do away with the message passing architecture. Because to ensure safety, there are two requirements, as I have mentioned. The first requirement is to ensure that the correct participants will reach to the correct decision. And the second requirement is that they will uniquely determine the decision. Now, the second requirement is actually more crucial, that to determine that you have reached to the consensus finality, that means whatever has been decided, that has been agreed by everyone, you have to rely on some type of message passing. That means you need to get a confirmation from everyone in the network that they are agreeing on this current state of the network. Well, so that way, if we want to give priority over safety, that inherently require a message passing based architecture. But as you have seen that in an open environment, we cannot use message passing based architecture. So what is the solution? So that particular solution, that to break this safety versus liveness dilemma, the Nakamoto consensus or the proof of work algorithm that worked as the kind of backbone behind the design of the Bitcoin cryptocurrency, which was proposed by Satoshi Nakamoto, and that's why many of the people call it as the Nakamoto consensus. That particular consensus have given more weightage to liveness rather than safety. Well, so what they say that my immediate focus is on liveness with the minimum safety guarantee. Well, so that means that it is not like that I am compromising safety completely, but I would give some kind of minimum safety guarantee. But my immediate focus would be on liveness. That means within some predefined time frame, I should be able to propose the next block. Well, so if my next block, if it happens that it takes infinitely many rounds to propose the next block, then obviously it is not going to be a kind of suitable protocol to do financial transactions. Well, because what will result that if you try to apply such kind of things where the protocol doesn't have any kind of liveness guarantee, it might happen that you have initiated a transaction and then for millions of years you do not know whether the transaction has been committed or not. Well, so that should not happen. So once you have initiated a transaction, within some finite number of duration, you should be able to know whether the transaction was successful or whether there was a failure. Well, means otherwise there is no meaning of carry forward with this kind of financial transaction in the digital world or even in the physical world. Well, so that is the kind of one of the fundamental requirements for any kind of financial transaction. So that's why this Nakamoto consensus have given priority over liveness. Well, that means I may not need the complete safety guarantee. Well, I would just maintain a minimum level of safety. That means I will ensure the security part of the protocol, but within a finite amount of duration, I should be able to say whether the transaction has been successful or not. Well, and the remaining part of the safety where I am compromising for the time being, eventually I will guarantee that. Well, so there is no time bound that by when I will be able to guarantee that, but eventually I will guarantee that. Well, so that is the kind of departure that Nakamoto consensus did from the classical idea of the distributed consensus. So again, I am repeating that the classical idea of distributed consensus had given more priority to safety over liveness, whereas Satoshi Nakamoto, he or she departed from that basic idea that, well, I need to give more priority to safety. What he said that for maintaining such kind of financial transaction, you give more priority to liveness. That means within a finite duration, you say whether the transaction was successful or not. Well, with a minimum level of security. And the remaining part where you are compromising, we'll see it later on or we'll take care of it later. Well, so that was the kind of basic premise behind the design of this proof of work algorithm. So let us see that how this proof of work algorithm worked in practice. Well, so how Satoshi Nakamoto had broken that safety versus liveness dilemma. So what is my problem? My problem is that I have an existing blockchain, and on that blockchain I need to propose a new next block. So I need to connect the next block to this existing blockchain. And you already know that in case of a kind of Bitcoin-based blockchain architecture or Bitcoin type of blockchain architecture, I have certain nodes which we call as the miner. Those miners mine the new block. So the task of the miner is to find out the next block and add that block with the existing blockchain and then broadcast that information in the peer-to-peer network with the help of the gossiping protocol. Well, so that is the kind of requirement that we have. Now, what this miner does that they maintain a list. That particular list is called the unconfirmed transaction list. Okay. So what this unconfirmed transaction list is? This unconfirmed transaction list actually contains the set of transactions which are being proposed by someone in the network, but they have not been confirmed into any existing blocks. Well, now for Bitcoin, you can actually see these unconfirmed transactions. Well, so let me just share my browser tab and let me show you these unconfirmed transactions from Bitcoin. So hello. Yeah, I'm not been able to hear you clearly. Can you please repeat your question? Or just post your question in the chat box. Okay, by the time, let me show it to you. So I guess that you are able to see my screen, right? Just confirm me. Any one of you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So here you see that this particular list actually shows the unconfirmed transactions in Bitcoin blockchain. So these are the kind of transactions that are getting proposed, or some node in blockchain, they are Bitcoin blockchain, they are proposing these transactions, but these transactions have not been added in the blockchain yet. So you can see that this is in real time. You can see this list, that this list is constantly getting updated, and new transactions are getting proposed. That you can see that in the single time frame, that 1138, so many number of different transactions have been proposed. Then you had 1137. So that means that every second you have multiple different transactions which are getting proposed, and they are getting added to this unconfirmed transaction list. Well, now in case of your Bitcoin blockchain or any kind of open blockchain network, every miners actually maintain such kind of transaction list. Well, let me share the slides again. Okay. Yeah. So this individual miners, they are maintaining this unconfirmed transaction list, and whenever some new transactions are being proposed in the network, these miners keep on updating their unconfirmed transaction list. And remember that this is being a kind of asynchronous network and the open network, there is no guarantee that all that miners will have a single copy of that unconfirmed transaction list. So it might happen that this TS16 that has been heard by miner 1 and miner 3. So miner 1 and miner 3 have added this transaction to their unconfirmed transaction list, but miner 2 have not heard it. So miner 2 has not been able to add this transaction to his or her list. Well, so that way, as we are having new transactions that are getting propagated in the network, the miners are keeping on updating this their unconfirmed transaction list, and that way every miner is maintaining this unconfirmed transaction list. Now, the miners, they need to propose the block. Now, to propose the block, what will happen? Again, I am coming back to the safety and the liveness guarantee. So, as I have mentioned, that the safety has two different requirements. The first requirement, that the next block that the miners are going to add to the existing blockchain, that should be correct in practice. That basically means that the transactions which are there in the block, they are verified, and the block contains the correct hash and the nonce. That means the block is correct technically. Well, so this part of the safety I can ensure. Well, because whenever a new block has been mined, that block will be broadcast in the network, and as different participants in the blockchain will get that block by the virtue of that cryptographic hash function, they will be able to verify that the transactions are correct and the block has the correct nonce. Well, because the existing blockchain is there available with all of those nodes. So from there, they can verify that the block is a correct block. But then the second requirement of safety is that all the miners should agree on a single block. Okay, because I was mentioning that the safety basically ensures that all correct participants should be uniquely agree to the correct information or the correct state of the system. Well, so they are agreeing on the correct state of the system. That was my first safety requirement. That part I am being able to ensure. But then they are going to uniquely agree on that particular state. That is my second safety requirement here in the context of blockchain, that all the miners should agree on a single block. Well, so that means the next block, which is going to get mined for this blockchain, that should be selected anonymously. Well, and proof of work or the Nakamoto consensus actually compromise with this part. Why? Because the miners do not know each other. Well, so when you do not know that who are there in the network, who are also trying to propose a new block, how can you come to an agreement with those people? Well, so you cannot do that, right? There is no practical way of doing that. So because of that reason, this Nakamoto consensus actually compromise here. Okay, what it says that, well, let us ensure that the first safety requirement is ensured. That means the block that is getting proposed, it is the correct block. But whether that is going to be the unique block or not, that we do not know, but we'll try to ensure it eventually. Rather, give more focus on liveness. That means you add a block as long as it is correct. That means the block contains valid transactions from the unconfirmed transaction list, and you move further. Well, by proposing the next block. That means you do not wait for ensuring the safety property. Rather, you make the progress. You keep on adding the block, and eventually, I will somehow ensure that the transactions of the block which is going to be get considered finally, that is unique. Well, so this particular liveness requirement, along with the compromisation with the safety 2 property that I mentioned earlier, it basically says that, well, 2 or more different miners may agree on 2 or different blocks. Well, so that basically says that you can mine 2 or more blocks and add them as a next block to your blockchain. Well, now with this particular idea that, well, I am going to give more priority over liveness, a minimum requirement of safety, that was the first safety property that I have mentioned, and compromising with the second safety property, that means the uniqueness property of the safety, how do we proceed? Okay, so as I have mentioned that, well, we'll resolve this later, resolve this property of compromising safety 2 that we are doing it, we'll do it, we'll resolve it later. So what the miner does, that the miner build up their next block, a possible block, from the list of transactions from the unconfirmed transaction list. Now here comes the interesting fact. That means these individual miners, they are working independently. They do not know that. So if I am working like a miner in a Bitcoin blockchain, I do not know who are the miners who are also trying to mine the next block. Well, so that information is not there with me. So every miner is independently constructing the block. And when every miner is independently constructing the block, then obviously you are not going to maintain any kind of fixed ordering of the transactions, right? So the 3 blocks that the 3 miners is trying to build up, you can see that there are different ordering of the transactions which are there in that block. Well, similarly, you cannot assume any kind of fixed number of transactions per block. Well, so different miners might have heard of different number of transactions. As I have shown you earlier, that it might happen that miner 2 has not heard of 1 transaction. So that way, again, you do not put any kind of limit that you need to have this many number of transactions on every block. But what typically Bitcoin blockchain or different kind of blockchain does, that they put a limit on the block size. Well, that is particularly to ensure that whenever you are broadcasting the block over the network, the block doesn't become too large to clog the network with the broadcasting information. Also, that is just to ensure that your network works perfectly, or you can satisfy the properties of your or the features or the performance counters that is being supported by your network. So to ensure that there is a limit on the block size, the maximum block size. Well, there is no limit on the minimum block size, that are the maximum block size. So it basically says that your block size should be something within 1 MB. Well, so that is the standard limit on the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, once every miner is generating these blocks independently, then what they try to generate the proof. Well, and this you have seen earlier, that they basically try to generate a nonce. And by virtue of the cryptographic hash function, we have seen this earlier, that the generation of this nonce is a complex procedure. You do not have any kind of deterministic algorithm to generate the nonce, but the verification of the nonce is easy. Well, so once you have created the nonce, then you can simply verify whether that nonce is correct or not. Well, by computing the hash. So that particular idea is applied here, and because the generation of the nonce is complex and the miners need to do a kind of exhaustive search to find out that what is going to be the nonce value based on the current target of the blockchain. In case of Bitcoin, you have seen that this is maintained by a parameter called the difficulty level. So accordingly, they try to generate the nonce. Well, now when my typical expectation is that out of all the miners who are trying to generate the next block, one of the miners will be able to generate the proof. Okay, because the kind of non-deterministic algorithm that they are trying to execute, they are doing exhaustive search. So everyone will take some random amount of time to generate the corresponding nonce and the hash. So that way, one of them will succeed. Well, now assume that miner 3 was able to generate the nonce. Well, so the miner 3 was able to generate this proof that he was been able to, he or she has been able to generate the hash and the corresponding nonce. So the block which is getting proposed by miner 3, that gets added to the blockchain. So what miner 3 does, that miner 3 just sign this block with his or her signature, digital signature, and then broadcast this block over the peer-to-peer network with the help of the Gossip protocol. Well, so that way the block gets added to the existing blockchain, and once the newly proposed block is broadcast over the network, everyone can see that block, and they add that block to their existing blockchain. Well, now, once this block has been added to the existing blockchain, then every miner will be able to see that block. Now, once the miners are able to see that block, what they do, that they remove those transactions which has already been added in the block from their unconfirmed transaction list. Okay, and then they start mining the next block. But what might happen, the second case that was there, that in reality, what might happen, that more than one miner might generate the nonce at almost similar time instance. Okay, may not be at the same time instance, but in a nearby time instance. Well, so this is always theoretically possible, and in reality, this might happen. Now, when more than one miners are generating the proof simultaneously, then as we have mentioned earlier, that we are compromising with the safety 2 property. We do not want uniqueness at this moment. So what proof of work says, that well, you add both the block in the blockchain, because you see from the correctness perspective, both the blocks are correct. Both the blocks contain valid transactions, and both the blocks contain the valid nonce and the hash with respect to its previous block. So technically, both the blocks are correct. So we are being able to provide a minimum level of safety. We are not saying that well, a wrong block has been added to the blockchain. Well, but both the blocks are technically correct. So for the time being, you consider that both the blocks are there in the blockchain. So what we say that, well, consensus finality is not ensured. Well, you cannot immediately say that whether this upper block is the final one or the lower block is final one. Well, so safety is not guaranteed or safety is not satisfied immediately. So for certain duration or for certain amount of time, the network remains partitioned. That means a part of the network may agree on one block and a part of another network may agree on a different block. Say, for example, if I am miner 3, I am proposing a new block. So the people who are from the network perspective, they are closer to me. That means the people who have minimum delay towards me, they will see the block that has been proposed by myself. And the other people who are there in the other end of the network, so there is another miner at the USA, assume that that miner has currently been able to propose a new block. Then the people who are close to that miner, they will see that particular block. So that means momentarily the network gets partitioned, well, and this violates the safety property of the protocol, that the network is getting partitioned. But even if the network is getting partitioned, you see that from the financial side, your safety is not getting violated that much. So both the blocks are technically correct. Well, but what we have said that, well, we will try to eventually pick up one of those blocks. Well, eventually you are going to satisfy the requirement of the safety 2, because ultimately you need to ensure that, because if you are not being able to ensure that, you will not be able to do the financial transactions. Because if you are saying that both the blocks are correct and I am generating one block and my fellow miner at USA is generating a different block, and it might happen that we have not heard all the transactions that was there being floated in between, and that may result in a double spending. That I have heard of one transaction, and my fellow miner in USA, he or she has had another transaction, and these are kind of double spending, and both of us are including that transaction in the blocks. Well, so that way we cannot, in long term, we cannot consider both the blocks simultaneously. So this particular thing is a momentarily decision. Well, so momentarily the miners, what they do, they remove the transactions corresponds to both the blocks from their unconfirmed transaction list. Well, and then they progress on adding the next block. Now, the proof of work, it eventually guarantees that these forks, well, fork basically means that you are creating a different branch of this blockchain. So this different branch of the blockchain will be resolved eventually. How it will be resolved? Now, one particular point or one particular argument that this blockchain miners or every node in the blockchain satisfies, that whenever they are hearing more than one blocks from their neighbors, they will accept the block that it hears from majority of the neighbors. So, for example, I have heard both of these blocks from my neighbors, but I am connected to say 10 neighbors. Out of those 10 neighbors, 6 or 7 of them has proposed one block, and 3 or 4 of them has proposed a different block. Then I am going to accept the block which has been proposed by more number of my peers, or which has been relayed by more number of my peers. That is the block that has been relayed by 6 or 7 of my peers. Well, if I hear the block from both the block from 5 of the peers, that means 5 of the peers have relayed one block and 5 of the other peers have relayed another block, then I will randomly select one of them. Well, and I will relay that block further. That means this 50% rule which is there, that means you accept a block only when you are going to hear it from majority of your neighbors or from majority of your peers, that will eventually discard one of the blocks. Well, so what will happen that with one of the blocks, people will discard, and the next block that is getting mined, it will be added to one of these 2 blocks. Well, so that way one chain over the time, one chain will be longer than other chain. Well, so one branch of the blockchain will be longer than its other branch. So this proof of work blockchain, they actually accept the longest chain as a part of the main chain. Well, and that way the other block which have been proposed, which were technically correct, that block will be marked as a fork block or a fork branch or a part of the fork branch, and we are not going to consider the transactions which are there in this block as the committed transaction. So what will happen, that the miners will find out that the transactions from this committed this fork block which are there, so from this fork block which has been marked as red, I have transaction 16, 17, 31, and 87. Out of these 4 transactions, 16, 17, and 31 has already been committed. Transaction 87 has not been committed yet. So that transaction is again reverted back to the unconfirmed transaction list of all the miners. Well, and this transaction, the miner tries to include it to the future blocks that is going to get mined. Now, because of this reason that momentarily the network can get partitioned, and momentarily part of the network can agree on one block and part of the network can agree on a different block, what basically this kind of proof of work blockchain does, that it promotes this idea of eventual consensus finality. So what they say, that although the transaction has been committed to the block, but the transactions are not spendable immediately. Well, so that means although I'm going to send you 10 Bitcoins, but you will not be able to immediately add those 10 Bitcoins to your applet because you need to wait for some number of blocks to see that whether that block has become part of the main chain or not. Well, and depending on the network delay, depending on a kind of analysis of the block propagation delay over the network, what Bitcoin blockchain says that, well, you cannot use a transaction until you get a confirmation of 6 blocks. Well, so that means once a transaction, say that transaction 22 has been added to a block, then after that there need to be 6 other blocks to be added, before which you will not be able to use transaction 22. Well, and this is basically ensured through the Bitcoin script. So the Bitcoin script basically keeps on checking that how many number of further blocks have been added after this block has been mined or after this block has been added to the blockchain. And once it finds out that, well, 6 more blocks have been added to the blockchain, then it marks this transaction as spendable. That means this particular transaction can be utilized further. So this is the kind of broad idea of this Nakamoto consensus or proof of work. So let me see if you have any query from this part. Any doubt about this proof of work algorithm on the Nakamoto consensus?
Sir,
Yes.
there can be a problem, like let's say by chance there are only even number of miners and there is a network adversary that always partitions 2 blocks to 2 equally defined sets, like 5 of the miners get 1 block and 5 of the miners always get another block. So in this way there cannot be a single longer chain, right?
Now you think from the attacker perspective. To do it, first the attacker need to understand or attacker need to find out that there are 5 miners, there are 10 miners currently who are trying to mine the block. Well, first of all, if you can ensure that your network is sufficiently large, well, there are millions of users in your network, and even there are thousands of miners, or even in practice in Bitcoin blockchain, there are millions of miners. You will never be able to get all the identities of all the miners. So again, so that is the reason I marked that point in red. So the assumption is that the adversary will never be able to get control over more than 50% of the network participants. If they are eventually get that control, then your security of the system is not ensured anymore. Right? So that is the reason this proof of work blockchain works only with sufficiently large number of people or sufficiently large number of participants and with diversified participants across the group. Okay. If you just want to run a proof of work blockchain within say 10 people, or even if you want to run it within the people within IIT Kharagpur network, you will not be able to do that. Okay. So you will not be able to ensure the safety of or even the correctness of that protocol. So this is the basic premise. So that is one of the reasons. So I have seen that there are many internet articles which has actually increased the hype of that blockchain, saying that you can possibly use blockchain for any of the applications in the world. And if you remember in the first class, I mentioned to you that is not true. Blockchains were designed for some specific applications in mind. Well, so you cannot apply blockchain for any of the applications, and this is one of the prime reason behind that. So if you want to use the open network and the proof of work blockchain, then you need to ensure that your participants are sufficiently diversified, and it is impossible for a dishonest person or an attacker to gain control over 50% of your or more than 50% of your participants. Well, if somehow the attacker gets control of it, your security of the entire system gets vanished at that point of time. Well, so this is the kind of basic assumption, and the entire technology works on based on that assumption. And I will show you in the next class that although for the Bitcoin blockchain, we didn't have such kind of attacks, but for other instances, say for example, for Ethereum blockchain, there was such kind of attack. So interestingly, that there is a variant of Bitcoin that is called Bitcoin FS. In the last month, that means in August middle, I forgot the exact date, there was an attack on that particular blockchain where the attackers were able to partition the blockchain into 2 groups or into 2 partitions. Well, and the prime reason behind that is that those blockchains, they have used an open architecture, but the number of participants were not sufficient. So the attackers were able to gather the information of the participants of that network. So if the attacker can able to gather the information about all the participants of the network, this kind of attacks are highly possible. You cannot eliminate that. So that's the kind of time requirement. Yeah, carry on.
So like there are mining pools in the Bitcoin, right? So does they hinder these securities? Like one pool has the information of the users, right?
So the mining pool, again, the way mining pool work, mining pool, they internally tries to decentralize themselves. Well, so that means you can join in a pool and you are going to collectively say trying to find out the nonce or trying to find out the hash. Well, there is a recent debate that is going on in the Bitcoin community that, well, if you look into the current blocks which are getting mined, you will see that majority of the blocks are getting mined by some 4 or 5 different mining pools. Well, although there are blocks which are getting mined by different people or getting mined by different other miners, but majority of the blocks are getting mined by some 4 or 5 different mining pools. Now, if some attacker is able to compromise those 4 or 5 different mining pools, then immediately the entire idea of the Bitcoin will collapse. Okay. So that is one of the recent, not recent, I would say that debate is going on for the last few years, that whether Bitcoin is any more secure or not. Because at the end of the day, it is going to be in the hand of the mining pools. So this kind of debates are kind of very open debates, and as a reason, you will see that many people doesn't like this blockchain technology at all. Means they say that, well, whatever we are claiming about blockchain, that it has that huge security, at the end of the day, that is nothing more than a hype. Because everything depends on your current computing power. Everything depends on that how people are actually trying to mine the block and how much you are being able to prevent the monopoly. Till now, we have been that blockchain developers have been able to prevent the monopoly, but there is no guarantee that they will be able to prevent it tomorrow. Okay. And as a result, you will see later on we will design different other consensus protocols. So there was techniques like Algorand. So if you are just browsing through the Bitcoin literature, you will see that recently or for the last couple of years, this Algorand has become very popular. That idea of Algorand was proposed by one of the MIT professor, Silvio Michalis. So that was very much popular nowadays. People are saying that Algorand provides much more security compared to Bitcoin. But again, Algorand has many implementation related challenges or many kind of problems. So we'll discuss Algorand later on. We'll see that it has possibly less problem compared to Bitcoin blockchain, but even it is not completely problem free. Well, so what I would say that at the end of the day that there is no free food. Well, so there are ways you can compromise it, but it is something like that you are relying on the current setup, you are relying on the current network architecture, saying that, well, majority of the people are honest, so it will eventually run. Fine. Any other query?
Sir, after receiving the block from a miner, the nodes, do they verify all the transactions that have been added by the miners, or do they only verify the?
Remember, this is just a kind of suggestion. This is not a kind of absolute requirement. There is no absolute requirement that you need to verify all the transactions. Well, but it basically says that I have kept the information open. So it is something like this, that I have kept the information open. Now, if someone wishes to verify, they can do the verification. But I am not asking anyone explicitly that if you want to use blockchain, you need to verify the transaction. Well, so for example, you can always be a passive participant in a Bitcoin blockchain. That means you are going to see all the transactions, you are going to even initiate the transactions, but you will not mine any block or you will not verify any block. That is also possible. So it is something like that because the information is transparent. It is expected that the attackers will not do anything. And to maintain your security, you do the verification. It is just like that. Oh, one interesting idea is coming to my mind. So say for example, our physical currency, physical notes. Well, so there are ways to verify that whether that physical notes are, say the 500 notes are okay, correct, or they have some kind of problem in that. Well, but do we always verify whenever we are taking the 500 bucks from say a shopkeeper or from a ATM machine? Well, possibly we never check, or at least say that out of the people who are there in the class, at least 90% of them never check. Well, so it is something like this. So you have that provision to do the verification. So it is up to you whether you are going to verify or not. Now, if you are losing your money just because you have not verified it, you cannot claim it later on.
Yes, sir. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Then let us close the class today. We'll be resuming in the next class from this point. Thank you all. Take care. Bye for today.